They didn't seal Gojo because he was dangerous. They sealed him because he was free. In a world built on control, Gojo was the glitch, untouchable, ungovernable, and that made him the ultimate threat. This isn't just a story about power, it's about what power becomes when the system starts to fear it. Gojo Satoru wasn't just the strongest sorcerer, he was a philosophical anomaly. His very existence posed a question no one wanted to answer. What happens when the strongest man no longer follows orders? From the moment he awakened his limitless technique with the 6 eyes, the balance of the Jujutsu world fractured. No longer could the elders operate from the shadows. No longer could hierarchy dictate destiny. Gojo walked in, smiled and bent the entire structure around his will. But Gojo never sought the throne. He didn't want to lead. He wanted to change everything, and that made him far more dangerous than anyone who craved control. He rejected their history. He trained students they deemed unworthy. He questioned every rule passed down as sacred. He was the living embodiment of a system outdated, afraid, and on the verge of collapse. So they did what all broken systems do when cornered by truth. They buried it. They sealed the question. Not because it was wrong, but because it was unanswerable. Because Gojo's very presence reminded them that power can exist without obedience, and obedience to them was everything. In Gojo, they saw the death of their world, a future where children questioned instead of obeyed, a reality where tradition held no weight if it wasn't earned. They couldn't kill him, so they did the next best thing. They labeled him too dangerous, too unstable, too proud. They turned their fear into policy, and behind the cold logic of strategy and containment was a raw, primal terror. They couldn't control him, and they never could. What they feared wasn't what Gojo would do. What they feared was what Gojo might inspire. Power is only dangerous when it becomes self-aware, and Gojo was fully awake. He knew what he represented, understood what the system feared, and still, he chose to walk the path of confrontation. Gojo didn't rebel with violence. He rebelled with clarity, by existing without apology, by teaching students to ask instead of obey, by laughing in the face of fear. He broke every unspoken rule they had buried beneath centuries of cursed tradition. They couldn't predict him, they couldn't guilt him, and they couldn't mold him into the loyal servant they needed. Gojo was no hero, but neither was he a villain. He was a mirror, and when the system looked at him, it saw its own irrelevance. This is why sealing him wasn't an act of war. It was an act of desperation. It wasn't strategy. It was suppression. They sold it as protection. But what they were really protecting was themselves, because Gojo asked the one question that breaks all illusions. Why should I listen to you? That question dismantles control faster than power ever could. It wakes up the sleepers. It plants doubt in the obedient. It turns loyalty into awareness. Gojo was the most dangerous kind of threat, not because of what he could do, but because of what he refused to become. He refused to be small. He refused to be silent. He refused to pretend the world was fine when it was rotting from the inside. And that's the part no one talks about. They sealed Gojo not because he broke the rules, but because he exposed them. In his smile, they saw defiance. In his questions, they saw revolution. And in his freedom, they saw the end of their reign. They used the excuse of balance. They claimed it was necessary for the good of all. But Gojo was the only one truly protecting the future. He believed in the new generation, in Yuji and Megumi, in Nobara, not because they were perfect, but because they were willing to change. Gojo didn't just train them to fight. He trained them to think, to feel, to reject the system when it no longer served the people it claimed to protect. And that is what scared the elders most of all, because power that teaches others how to wake Up can never be caged forever. Even now, sealed inside the prison realm, Gojo is still teaching, not with words but with memory, with legacy, with the questions he left behind. And one day, those questions will grow too loud to ignore, because a system built on fear cannot survive. The echo of a single man who chose truth over silence. So the next time you hear the story of Gojo's sealing, don't ask what made him dangerous. Ask what made him free. Because in every system of control, there is always one who sees through the lie, one who chooses to question instead of obey, and those are the ones they silence first. But Gojo's silence is not the end. It's the warning before the storm. Because once you see what he saw, you can't go back.